Welcome to Demon Sleep. I'm here to help you unwind tonight. If you enjoy this space, feel free to like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It makes this feel like a shared night across the world. These stories are different and I'm glad you're here. Dim the lights, let the room settle, and let's begin. Story 1. Never look in the ravia. Most people don't realize the moment their life bends towards something darker. It usually happens quietly, with a drink sweating onto a sticky bar top and a rumor you weren't meant to hear. Dale was killing time in a bar that survived purely out of habit, the kind of place where the lights buzzed louder than the conversation and the stools felt one sit away from collapse. He wasn't there by choice. He was there because 50 cents a line didn't buy dignity, and desperation had a way of lowering standards. Somewhere in his pocket was a half-baked pitch about strange sutungs near a Wustwada facility. Junk copy meant to fill space, nothing more. 2 seats down, an old man had been talking non-stop, his voice worn thin like a tire that should have been replaced years ago. Dale ignored him until one sentence cut through the noise like glass. They die before they can even pull over, right there, in their own cars. That was enough. Dale's attention snapped into place. The man wasn't telling it like a ghost story. There was no flair, no grin, just facts delivered with the weight of repetition. Drivers cruising an old stretch of road. No crashes, no skid marks, just vehicles drifting to a stop with bodies slumped forward, eyes frozen open. The official cause was always the same, some sudden failure inside the skull. Natural, convenient. But the people who survived, the ones riding shotgun or asleep in the back, said the same thing before they shut down completely. They all swore there was someone sitting behind them, someone who wasn't there before the drive began. The bartender waved it off as trauma talking, the kind that scrambles memory and fills in blanks with nonsense. The old man didn't argue. He simply said he'd spent 3 decades hauling wrecks off that road, and 4 times he'd lifted the dead from driver seats while their faces stayed locked on the mirror. When Dale asked where this was happening, the man studied him like a bad investment. His eyes were dull, colorless, and tired of explaining things to people who wouldn't listen. He told Dale that writing about it would be a mistake. Then, after a pause, he gave him the location anyway. 12 miles of abandoned highway between 2 forgettable towns. The old road, not the modern bypass. The kind of road people romanticized but avoided once the sun went down. Dale left more money on the counter than he should have and stepped into the cold. Autumn hit him hard, smoke, dead leaves, and the sour sweetness of processed corn riding the wind. His car waited where he'd left it, paint dulled by time, locks that worked only when they felt like it, and an engine that complained with every mile. He sat there longer than necessary, hands resting on the wheel, staring through the windshield without seeing anything. 3 years earlier, he'd been someone else, a byline people trusted, a desk in a real newsroom. He told himself the shortcuts were harmless, that truth mattered more than process. The facts had been right, only the names were imaginary. It felt almost noble at the time. The fallout hadn't been noble at all. He'd lost his job midweek. His marriage didn't last the weekend. By the next Monday, strangers were laughing at his name online, reducing his entire career to a cautionary joke. Now he chased scraps and drank cheap beer in forgotten bars, listening for stories no one else wanted to hear. As the engine finally turned over, Dale caught his reflection in the ravia mirror, and for just a second, he didn't recognize the man looking back. He paid his rent by chasing nonsense. Lights in the sky, miracle cures whispered on late-night radio, promises that fell apart the moment you touched them. His apartment was a single room stacked above a takeout place, forever soaked in grease and sweet smoke. At 42, his life sagged inward, corners soft, barely holding its own weight. So when the rumor sounded unhinged, it didn't scare him off. It felt like fate clearing its throat. He drove the stretch the very next night. That road looked abandoned by time itself. Everything along it felt paused mid-decay. Fuel stations with hoses that never pumped, diners hiding behind filth-streaked glass, sun-bleached signs bragging about rooms priced for a decade long dead. It wasn't nostalgia. It was rot wearing a smile. Dale drove alone. The windows stayed cracked despite the bite in the air. The radio remained silent. He needed to hear the road breathe. And it did. Under the tires was a low vibration, a constant murmur, like power moving through cables that should have been replaced decades ago. The first night passed untouched. So did the second. By the third, the quiet pressed in so hard he started talking just to prove he existed, telling the empty car his name, his purpose, that he was listening. A semi roared past in the opposite lane, light flooding the cabin so suddenly his eyes burned. When the glare faded, he checked the mirror. Nothing. Just trash on the floor, old wrappers, a cracked vinyl seat split down the middle like ice giving way. He kept coming back, again. 11 runs in 14 days. Excuses piled up back at the tabloid, missed deadlines, unanswered calls, a trail of lies thin enough to see through. Eventually, he stopped pretending to be reachable. On the 15th night, October biting hard now, he was a few miles past the grove when the feeling hit him. Not fear, something older. A chill that didn't come from the air but from inside his bones. The kind that wakes instincts buried deep, reminders from a time when humans didn't rule the dark. He lifted his eyes. The mirror held a man, seated perfectly upright in the back, hands folded, still as furniture. He wore a brown suit that belonged to another era, neat and plain, the sort you'd see in forgotten catalog pages. His hair was combed with care. His face, forgettable, so average it resisted memory even while being seen. Dale's grip seized the wheel. The car drifted, corrected itself, some reflex stepping in while his mind locked solid. The man didn't move, didn't blink. Dale tried to speak and found nothing there. His mouth felt packed with dust. His heart stumbled, lost its rhythm, then found it again in a way that hurt. The expression on the man's face changed, not emotion exactly, more like weariness pressed so deep it had hardened into something unbearable. This is it, Dale realized. This is the moment. The stories made sense now. The frozen eyes, the sudden silence. Time stretched, the road stayed empty. No headlights, no witnesses. Just the hum beneath the tires, and the quiet certainty that whatever sat behind him had been waiting a very long time to be seen. His fingers had gone numb from gripping the wheel. Every joint ached. In the mirror, the man shifted, just enough to be unmistakable. He leaned forward. When he spoke, the sound didn't belong in the car. It carried a thin, metallic echo, like a voice dragged through decades of bad wiring, flattened and distant. "Pull over." Dale obeyed before the words finished forming. The car lurched onto the gravel, stones popping beneath the tires. He sat there with the engine running, chest fluttering, breath shallow and fast. The man moved closer again and repeated it. This time the word came out wrong, too thick, too moist, as if his mouth hadn't practiced speaking in years. Dale killed the engine. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pressed in from all sides. He twisted in his seat. The man remained exactly where he'd been, solid and present, yet somehow untouched by the soft glow of the dashboard lights, as if illumination didn't quite apply to him. Dale swallowed and forced the question free. "Am I going to die?" "Yes," the man said calmly. Then after a pause, "Not intentionally, not anymore." They drove again. Dale barely remembered deciding to. 6 miles later, a diner appeared out of the dark, its sign buzzing weakly like it was tired of being noticed. Inside, everything smelled of burnt coffee and old oil. One waitress lingered behind the counter, her face permanently set in the shape of disappointment. She didn't comment when Dale wasn't alone. They slid into a booth. Dale ordered coffee. The other man didn't order anything. A cup arrived for him anyway, placed down by instinct more than choice. Steam rose for a few seconds, then stopped abruptly, as if heat itself had reconsidered. "My name is Arthur Gaines," the man said. "I died in 1956. He explained it without drama. A collision not far from there. Metal through bone. 4 minutes of awareness before everything went quiet. Dale clutched his mug, letting the heat anchor him to something real. Arthur said he'd been given work afterward. A job. He was meant to guide the newly dead, to lead them forward, away from the confusion, toward something brighter. It was supposed to be simple. But time didn't behave once you stepped outside it. Sometimes the path twisted. Sometimes the destination split in two. Sometimes the light vanished entirely. He'd look back at the people following him and realize he didn't know where he was going anymore. They trusted him anyway. When he failed them, they faded. And every time they disappeared, part of him went with them, until he found himself awake again on the same road, years passing without moving an inch. Arthur called it being stuck, but the words didn't quite fit. There was something wrong with the way he said it, like he'd been repeating that explanation for decades, hoping it would eventually become true. Dale didn't hesitate. His pen was already moving. He asked the question anyway, the one that sat between them like a loaded gun. Why were people dying? Arthur's face tightened, rearranging itself into something difficult to witness. He said it was never his intention. Every time he appeared to ask for help, he brought something with him. Not a presence, a burden. Weight. Everything he'd failed to carry forward. Every soul that had waited for him to lead and never arrived. They clung to him, layered and dense, far heavier than anything meant for the living world. When he entered a car, that mass collapsed inward, straight through him, straight into the driver's mind. The human brain wasn't built to hold it. The damage was instant. No pain, no time to scream, just silence. As Arthur spoke, his expression settled into something almost unbearable, features aligned with surgical precision, grief rendered so clean it looked instructional. Dale felt his chest tighten watching it, some instinct whispering that real sorrow was usually messier, asymmetrical. But Arthur didn't pause, and Dale didn't stop writing. Arthur said he'd tried staying unseen, tried passing through without being noticed. It didn't matter. Every few months, something pulled him forward anyway, snapping him back into the world at the worst possible moment. Another back seat, another life ending while he watched, trapped and useless. He needed weight of a different kind. If his story existed, truly existed, in the physical world, bound to paper and ink and human attention, maybe that would tether him. Maybe it would make him solid enough to finish what he'd been meant to do, to release what was still tied to him. Dale stared across the table, pulse steady now, mind racing. The reporter inside him, the stubborn, wounded thing he thought had died years ago, was already assembling the angle. A confession from beyond death, a broken guide seeking absolution, a story so impossible it demanded belief. And maybe quietly, a way back for both of them. The light above their booth flickered again. Somewhere behind the kitchen door, a radio whined out a song soaked in steel strings and regret. The diner smelled scorched and stale, like it had given up on renewal decades earlier. Dale asked what Arthur remembered from before. That's when the visits began to blur together. 4 more meetings over the next 2 weeks, always the same hours when the night felt thinnest. Arthur would appear without warning, seated behind him on that forgotten stretch of road, and Dale would drive them to the diner with his heart in overdrive and his hands perfectly calm. Arthur talked. He remembered growing up in Springfield, a father who knocked on doors for a living, coming home reeking of strangers, smoke, and quiet defeat. A mother with a voice smooth and warm, raised in song for a congregation but never shared at home. Friday nights under stadium lights, second-string defense, helmet on his knees more than his head. A girl with red hair and freckles who laughed easily and married someone else while he was overseas. Ordinary memories, small humans stubbornly alive. And every time Arthur spoke, Dale wrote, because some stories once told refused to stay buried. Dale never paused to think. The pen was already scratching, chasing the moment before it slipped away. He asked the question anyway, the one neither of them could avoid. Why did people keep dying? Arthur's face shifted, muscles pulling into a shape that hurt to look at. He said it wasn't deliberate. It never had been. Each time he crossed over far enough to be seen, he carried something with him. Not a body, not a presence, but pressure. A crushing kind of weight. All the souls he'd failed to lead onward were still bound to him, stacked and compacted, an impossible mass that didn't belong anywhere near the living. When he entered a car, that burden transferred in an instant, slamming into the driver's mind like a dropped safe. The brain couldn't survive it. There was no warning, no moment of understanding, just a sudden end. As he explained, Arthur's features settled into a look so precisely arranged it felt unnatural, like grief rendered by a machine that knew the theory but not the mess of it. Dale felt something tighten in his chest, an unease he couldn't name. Real sorrow usually leaked and warped. This didn't, but Arthur kept speaking and Dale kept writing. Arthur said he'd tried staying hidden, tried slipping through the world without being noticed. It never worked. Every few months, some force dragged him back into focus. Another car, another driver, another death he was powerless to prevent. He needed a different anchor. If his story existed in the living world, fixed in ink, given weight by human attention, maybe it would hold him in place. Maybe it would make him solid enough to finish what he'd failed to do, to finally let go of what clung to him. Dale studied him across the table, heartbeat steady, thoughts racing ahead. The journalist he'd nearly buried, the part of him that still believed in truth, in consequence, was already shaping the idea. A voice from beyond death, a guide who'd lost the way, a story so strange it demanded to be taken seriously. And maybe, just maybe, a second chance for them both. The light above the booth buzzed and flickered. From the back came the thin sound of a radio, heavy with longing. The air smelled old and burnt, like the diner had surrendered to time long ago. Dale asked about the life Arthur remembered. After that, the nights blended together. They met 4 more times over the next couple of weeks, always in the hours when the world felt half asleep. Arthur would appear in the back seat without warning on that forgotten stretch of road, and Dale would drive them to the diner, fear pounding in his chest while his hands stayed steady. Arthur remembered being a boy in Springfield, a father who sold policies door to door and came home carrying other people's smoke and disappointment, a mother whose voice filled churches but never the house, football games spent waiting on the sidelines, a girl with bright hair and freckles who chose someone else while life moved on without him. Nothing extraordinary, just a life. And each time Arthur spoke, Dale wrote, because some truths, once given shape, refused to disappear again. Dale understood the simplest explanation was that none of it was real, that Arthur was a story his own unraveling mind had stitched together to feel useful again. But even if it was a lie Arthur believed down to whatever passed for his bones. At their 5th meeting, the last one, Arthur leaned across the table. The surface between them was stained yellow with age, scarred by old burns and careless hands. His presence felt thinner somehow, stretched. "You'll write it," Arthur said. There was urgency in his voice now, a gravity that hadn't been there before, as if each sentence cost him something he couldn't replace. Dale promised, no conditions, no hesitation. He'd put it all down, he'd make people listen. Arthur's face shifted into something fragile. It might have been relief, it might have been hope, it might have been the look of someone spotting help just before their strength gave out. Dale asked one last thing. What if it didn't work? Arthur didn't answer right away. The light above them snapped off, plunging the booth into shadow, then sputtered back on with a tired hum. "Then it doesn't stop," Arthur said softly, "ever." After that, Arthur never appeared again. Dale sold the idea as factual storytelling, a first-person account of an impossible killer who wanted redemption. He sent the proposal everywhere. Silence followed, 5 times over. The 6th response came on a Tuesday morning while Dale stood at his sink, eating noodles straight from the pot. The woman on the phone knew his history, knew the mistakes. She wasn't interested in rehashing them. The story was too good. She asked one question: would he stand behind it as true? Dale said yes before she finished speaking. The deal closed fast, faster than anything in his life ever had. The number attached to it felt unreal, more money than he'd touched in years combined. There were deadlines now, expectations, a clock ticking loudly. Dale didn't waste a day. He disappeared into a rented cabin surrounded by fields and silence. He wrote like someone trying to outrun something just behind him. He didn't decorate the truth or soften it. There was no need. The story already carried its own weight. A lost guide, a failed reporter, 2 broken things leaning on each other. He described Arthur carefully. The plain suit, the neat hair, the forgettable face that refused to stay forgettable once you saw it. The eyes that never quite met yours, like his attention existed just past the visible world. Dale wanted readers to know him, to feel like they'd sat across from him in that booth at 3 in the morning. The book came out less than a year after that first night on the road. No one expected much. The market was crowded, the campaign was small. Then the reviews landed. Then the calls. Words like unforgettable and unsettling started appearing in places Dale used to read with envy. Interviews followed, invitations, conversations about adaptations and retellings. People wanted to know if he was scared. Dale always gave the same answer. No, because if Arthur was real, then the story was working. And if Arthur wasn't, then Dale had given meaning to something broken inside himself. Either way, the road between those towns stayed quiet, and no one reported dying while staring into their mirror anymore. Passenger Manifest reached the bestseller list before Dale had time to feel nervous about it. By the third week, his name was everywhere. Interviewers asked the same question in different voices. Did he truly believe Arthur Gaines had been real? Dale always answered the same way, yes. He said he'd seen Arthur, spoken with him, learned his life from his own mouth. Could it have been a hallucination? Possibly. Could stress and shame have fractured something inside him? He admitted it wasn't impossible. But he didn't believe that was the truth. He believed Arthur had existed, and that the story had released him. People loved that answer. The uncertainty made it richer. Dale never smirked or softened it. He didn't perform skepticism. He meant what he said, and audiences leaned forward because of it. 4 months later, hundreds of thousands of copies were in circulation. Dale cleaned up his life quietly. Debts vanished. The car that rattled like it might give up any day was replaced with something solid. He moved into an apartment that felt intentional. Wood floors, clean light, windows that opened onto sky instead of trash. His former wife called. She sounded genuinely happy for him. He sent her money without being asked. In December, almost exactly a year after that first night, Dale drove back to the diner. The place looked the same lights, same tired counter. The waitress didn't know who he was. He ordered coffee and sat where he always had, staring at the empty seat across from him, waiting for something to rise up inside him. Nothing did. No grief, no triumph, no sense of closure. Just absence. Arthur was gone. The road stayed quiet. No more unexplained deaths. Even the authorities noticed. Someone went on record saying that if there had ever been something wrong with that stretch of highway, it appeared to have passed. Dale drove home with the windows open, an old song drifting through the car, and wondered why doing the right thing sometimes felt so strangely flat. The first new report surfaced in early spring. A woman in Oregon, found stopped at a light after her shift ended, engine running, eyes fixed open. The cause was the same as before, sudden catastrophic failure inside the brain. The passenger said something odd. For just a moment she'd seen a man in the back seat, only in the mirror, then nothing. She also mentioned she'd been reading a book, a popular one. She just reached the part where the author described the man's face. Dale saw the article shared online and dismissed it immediately. Random tragedies found patterns where none existed. It happened all the time. 2 weeks later, another case surfaced. Different city, same details, same words from the surviving passenger. Someone they shouldn't have seen. This time, Dale didn't scroll past. He sat very still, eyes on the screen, and felt a cold understanding begin to take shape, slowly, carefully, like something making sure it was seen. He had wanted readers to picture Arthur exactly as he had. And now, across the country, people were doing just that. Then the reports spread outward. First a case tied to a library copy, then another city, then another. By summer, the map looked wrong, too neat, too intentional. Dale began saving everything. Articles, local blogs, late-night forum posts where strangers compared details they weren't supposed to notice. The pattern refused to blur. Every person who died had read the book or sat beside someone who had. Every survivor described the same man: plain suit, neatly parted hair, a face so forgettable it became unmistakable. Dale's words. He called his agent. She'd already seen the chatter. She told him it was awful, but it wasn't evidence. People were primed by the story, she said. Once an idea took root, the mind filled in gaps on its own. That was how panic worked. That was how myths were born. Dale wanted to accept that. He really did. But he couldn't stop seeing Arthur across that diner table. Couldn't forget the way his voice had cracked when he asked to be written into the world. By June, the count passed numbers no one wanted to say out loud. Then the counting stopped entirely. The connection was unproven, and attention drifted elsewhere. But Dale didn't stop. He tracked everything: locations, dates, sales figures his publisher provided without asking why. The overlap was flawless. Spikes followed public readings. Surges followed book club nights. Deaths clustered wherever the book was easiest to find. He begged the publisher to pull it. They refused. Rights, liability, no confirmed cause, stress, they suggested. The pressure of success breaking something fragile inside him. They offered help, counseling, rest, reassurance, while numbers kept climbing. Hundreds of thousands of copies, digital editions multiplying, audio rights sold, screen talks beginning. Arthur was no longer confined to Forgotten Road. Dale started drinking again in midsummer, not casually, not socially. He sat in the dark with a bottle and his phone face down, afraid of the next alert, afraid of another headline describing a body in a running car, a book tucked nearby like an accessory. 2 weeks earlier, he'd made the mistake of walking downtown. A bookstore window stopped him cold. They turned the display into a shrine. His face, confident, smiling, stared out from a blown-up photo taken before he understood the cost. Beside it stood a fake roadside scene from another decade. Stacks of his book rose like a monument. A slogan stretched across the glass, promising transformation. Dale stood there while the city flowed around him. Someone paused, admired the setup, snapped a picture and walked on, carrying the idea with her. And Dale understood then, with a clarity that hurt, that Arthur hadn't been freed. He'd been multiplied. Probably for social media, probably with a tag, probably opening one more door. Dale went home and emptied a bottle in a single sitting. Sometime near dawn, the shape of it finally became clear. Arthur had never been wandering. He had been confined. Whatever rules governed the dead had pinned him to that forgotten strip of road, 12 miles of cracked pavement between two towns no one hurried through. He could appear only there, only in cars, only when the driver was alone, only in those thin hours when the world was half asleep. That wasn't freedom, that was containment. The book hadn't unlocked a cage, it had copied the key. Every printed page was an access point. Every reader who imagined the man, his plain suit, his carefully parted hair, that forgettable face, built a passage in their own mind. And once the image existed clearly enough, Arthur could step through it. Anywhere, any city, any vehicle, any time. Dale remembered Arthur saying the story would make him real. He had assumed that meant rest, release, an ending. He hadn't understood it meant reach. He hadn't freed a prisoner. He had multiplied one. A few nights later, riding the train home with a bag clinking at his feet, Dale saw the proof unfold in real time. The car was mostly empty. Across from him sat a young woman with earbuds in and a book open on her knees. He recognized the cover instantly. His throat closed. She was deep enough in that her eyes weren't moving fast anymore. She was picturing things, filling in details, building the face without knowing it. Dale watched her fingers hold the page as she stared out at the dark glass, letting the story sink in. She had no idea what she was rehearsing. No idea what she was inviting into the back seat of some future drive. The train jolted. She barely noticed, kept reading. Dale got off at the next stop. Not his stop. He walked through the rain until his stomach rebelled and left him bent over behind a closed-down storefront, shaking. He considered going to the authorities, tried to imagine the words. He didn't get far. He thought about publishing a warning, another book, a confession. But that would only spread the image further. More eyes, more minds, more doors. There was no reversal. The story was out there. The man was out there. And the deaths would keep coming, spaced just far enough apart to be dismissed. Late one Tuesday, with the city still awake and the world pretending nothing was wrong, Dale drove south, back to where it had begun. He parked along the old road, engine off, windows down, and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. Then the air changed. The hum returned beneath the silence. And in the mirror, without sound or warning, Arthur Gaines appeared, sitting patiently, hands folded, looking not at Dale but past him, ready to be remembered again. He sat in the car as daylight drained out of the sky and the road gave itself back to silence. The vehicle was new, paid for with money that still felt unreal, quiet, dependable, anonymous. He hated it. The old car had rattled and leaked and told the truth about its limits. This one pretended everything was fine. Dale waited without knowing why. Maybe he expected judgment, maybe mercy, some sign that the universe had noticed what he'd done and was preparing a response. But nothing came. The highway stayed empty, no headlights, no shape forming in the mirror. He drove home after midnight, dulled by alcohol and exhaustion, cutting through side streets to avoid the road that had started it all. His apartment greeted him with the smell of neglect, trash he hadn't taken out, envelopes he hadn't opened. Money sat in his accounts untouched while bills stacked up anyway, ignored out of habit more than need. He opened his laptop and checked the numbers. They were higher. They were always higher. Hundreds of thousands of copies in circulation now, growing daily. He didn't need to read the figure to understand what it meant. Hundreds of thousands of doorways. His phone vibrated. Another alert, another city, another car. This time the victim had been listening instead of reading. Dale shut the laptop and stood in the bathroom, staring at his reflection. The man looking back seemed older than the mirror allowed, thinner, hollowed out. He recognized that face. It was the same one he'd worn when everything else had collapsed years earlier. A man who knew exactly where the fault lay. He poured another drink and sat in the dark. That's when the air behind him shifted. Not a sound, a pressure change. His body reacted before his thoughts could, muscles locking, breath stalling. That ancient alarm rang again, buried deep and undeniable. He turned slowly. Arthur stood in the hallway. Same suit, same careful hair, same face that once slipped from memory as soon as you stopped looking at it. Not anymore. Arthur smiled. It was wrong, too deliberate, like a mimicry learned secondhand. Dale's keys lay on the table. The door was beyond Arthur. The distance between them felt deliberate. You did what you said you would, Arthur said. His voice carried weight now, density. Beneath it was another sound, a dry, collective whisper, like countless pages shifting together in a single breath. You wrote me into the world. Arthur stepped closer. I'm not bound anymore, he continued. I don't need roads or nights or empty cars. Dale couldn't speak. The room felt smaller with every inch Arthur closed. Anywhere someone remembers me, Arthur said softly, I can arrive. The whisper grew louder. I was afraid you might regret it, Arthur said, but you shouldn't. Arthur stopped a few feet away. You didn't save me, he said. You shared me. And as Arthur leaned in, Dale finally understood the cruel precision of it all. He had warned people not to picture the man's face. And then he taught the entire world exactly how. Tokyo is reading you right now, Arthur said calmly. London, Sao Paulo, your words are moving through time zones as we speak. Dale felt it then, the room tightening, the air sharpening. The temperature dropped fast enough that his breath turned white in front of his face. Every reader, Arthur continued, is an entrance. Every imagination another step closer. Dale shook his head, barely able to form the thought, let alone the words. I thought I was helping. Arthur tilted his head, studying him like a curiosity. You thought you were rescuing me, he said. But I never asked to be rescued. I asked to be recorded, to be given shape, to exist again. Dale swallowed. Why? Arthur's smile thinned. Because a stretch of highway was too small. 12 miles wasn't enough. I was tired of waiting for the right driver to pass through. I wanted the drivers to come to me. He stepped closer. Up close, Dale could see what his instincts had already known. Arthur's face was almost human, too perfect. The symmetry was wrong. The skin too smooth, like a replica made by someone who understood anatomy but not life. You were ideal, Arthur said. A fallen journalist, starving for relevance, willing to believe as long as belief offered redemption. Dale's hands trembled violently now. I've waited decades for someone like you, Arthur went on. The desperate ones never last. Their hearts give out, they quit. The skeptics refuse to commit the story to paper. But you were hungry, skilled, broken in just the right way. The memory hit Dale like a blow. Arthur across from him at the diner, voice worn thin, eyes pleading. Every detail had been rehearsed, every sigh calculated. All of it, Dale whispered, an act. Arthur didn't deny it. The deaths you began won't stop, Arthur said softly. They'll spread. Wherever your book travels, I can follow. Anyone who reads my description, anyone who imagines my face, opens a way in. Arthur's eyes gleamed. You gave me the world. Highways, cars, empty nights, people alone with their thoughts. Arthur's smile widened, stiff and practiced. You wanted to matter again. You wanted your name remembered, and it will be. Dale's knees buckled. He collapsed onto the couch as his glass tipped, whiskey spilling across the table like blood. Arthur loomed over him. Frost crept along the windows, spreading in delicate, patient patterns. I could kill you, Arthur said casually. You've done your job. He leaned closer, the cold intensifying. But I won't. It's better if you live. Better if you watch the numbers climb. Better if you wake every day knowing exactly what you unleashed. Arthur's face hovered inches away now. Dale caught the smell then. Stagnant water, wet soil. Something old and buried that had never truly decomposed. You'll see every milestone, Arthur whispered. Every sail, every body. The whispering sound returned, louder now, like countless pages turning at once. And then Arthur straightened, stepping back into the darkness of the hallway. "Sweet dreams, Dale," he said. "You've made me unforgettable." Inside a sealed coffin, Arthur's voice had softened, almost reverent. "Thank you," he said, "for telling my story, for giving me weight, for letting me walk again." And then he was gone. Not a fade, not a shadow slipping away. One moment the hallway held him, and the next it was empty, just darkness and silence where something impossible had stood. The cold lifted, slowly, like a held breath finally released. The frost on the windows thinned, then wept, water tracing quiet lines down the glass. The apartment returned to itself, normal, ordinary, lying. Dale didn't move. Minutes passed, maybe hours. His phone buzzed. Another alert. Another death. Then another. He closed his eyes and saw it. Arthur sliding into the back seat of a car in Tokyo, the commuter never noticing the weight settling behind him as he turned the final page of the Japanese edition. Arthur in London, rain streaking the windows. Arthur in Sao Paulo, Mumbai, everywhere language carried the shape of his face. Everywhere Dale's words had gone. Everywhere someone read carefully enough to picture him. 422,000 copies. And climbing. Dale picked up his phone and pulled up his publisher's number. His thumb hovered, useless. What could he possibly say? Stop printing it. Too late. The thing existed now. Ink and paper and memory. You couldn't erase a story once it had been read. You couldn't pull words back out of the world. They lodged in minds. They waited. They opened doors. He set the phone down, poured another whiskey, and sat in the quiet, waiting for the next vibration. The next name. The next place. The next proof that stories, once written, never truly end. Story 2, the clock that counts you. Listen carefully. There is a sound that exists nowhere else on earth and never more than once a year. It isn't music. It isn't cheering. It's the almost silent rhythm of millions of hearts tightening at the same time, bracing for an ending they pretend is a beginning. Times Square on New Year's Eve isn't a celebration. It's a living clock, meat and breath and sweat packed so tightly together that time itself feels trapped inside human bodies. Hope winds it. Alcohol oils it. Fear keeps it ticking. The ball begins its descent, a mirrored tear falling from the sky, reflecting 1,000 versions of the same hungry face. People look up like time might spill out if they stare hard enough. They believe midnight is a doorway. They believe something can be left behind. I count them. 7, I decide, as daylight bleeds out of the streets and artificial night takes over. 7 tonight. Between the first strike of midnight and the last drunken echo of Auld Lang Syne, 7 hearts will fail to start again. Not accidents, not fate, not the usual betrayals of flesh and age. These are mine. Selected, marked, harvested. You won't notice when it happens. You'll think someone fainted. You'll step around the body. Someone will shout for help that arrives too late. Paramedics will work harder than they need to, because everyone here needs to believe effort still matters. You cannot see me. I am the cold that slips through your coat no matter how tight you button it. I am the hollow second before a breath, when you wonder, quietly, why you came here at all. I am the pressure behind your eyes when the countdown starts and you suddenly feel afraid for no clear reason. I am older than champagne, older than clocks, older than numbers pretending to measure something they never truly controlled. I was born the first time, A human watched winter swallow the land and understood that some endings do not ask permission. I once had a name. I wore it smooth over centuries, repeating it until it meant nothing, until it slipped away like a river stone losing its edges. Now I am only the counter, and midnight is almost here. Mom. The word is small, fragile. It leaves her mouth without conviction, as if even it is unsure it deserves to exist. Susan does not hear it. The crowd roars, a living organism learning how to breathe as one. Music thunders from speakers bolted to buildings like industrial scars. A cheer rises for no reason at all, just because the sky is dark enough now to feel important. Susan adjusts her lens instead. She is tracking a brunette couple kissing too hard, too desperately. Faces contort in joy photograph better, she has learned. Emma tries again. Mom. Louder this time, still swallowed whole. She hasn't said the word out loud in years. In the place she was kept, names were dangerous. Names meant memory, and memory led to punishment. Even now, free for almost 3 years, the habit remains. Silence as camouflage. Susan shifts her weight. Her elbow bumps Emma's sleeve. Emma feels it like a lightning strike. She laughs, a nervous sound, the wrong sound. She reaches out and touches her mother's arm, lightly, respectfully, the way you touch a stranger to get their attention. Susan flinches, annoyed, instinctively protective of her space. She turns halfway, irritation already forming, prepared to see a drunk tourist or a teenager asking for a picture. She sees a young woman. Blonde but duller, older, ordinary. Susan's eyes slide past her and return to the crowd. Emma's heart stutters. No, she says louder now. Mom, please. Susan looks again. This time she really looks. Her brain refuses the information at first. It rejects it the way a body rejects a foreign organ. Too many years, too much disappointment, too many false faces studied at 400% zoom in the blue light of her apartment at 3 a.m. But there are things you don't forget. The tilt of the chin when nervous. The left eyebrow that never quite learned how to sit still. The way fear sharpens the eyes without making them weak. Susan's camera slips from her hands. It hits the pavement with a sound like a gunshot. The world narrows to a tunnel between two faces. Emma is crying now. She doesn't notice when it starts. Tears just appear, hot and humiliating, cutting tracks down her cheeks. She nods once, frantic, as if movement might make this real. I didn't die, she says, because that is the fear she sees in her mother's eyes. I didn't die, I'm here. Susan makes a sound that is not language. She reaches out, stops herself, reaches again, fingers trembling inches from Emma's face, as if afraid she'll pass straight through. When she finally touches her, cheek, hair, the curve of a jaw she once kissed goodnight, it breaks her. She sobs, loudly, unashamed, her body folding in on itself like a structure whose supports have finally been kicked away. They cling to each other, while the crowd cheers something neither of them hears. Around them, time accelerates. The counter watches. One heart claimed not by stopping, but by breaking open. This one does not belong to me. The rules are older than cruelty. Joy is allowed its victories. Hope, occasionally, is permitted to survive the night. I let them have this. 6 remain. The ball begins its descent. And somewhere in the vast, sweating mass of humanity, another chosen heart has already begun to race, unaware it is counting down for me. I will be gentle. The air in Times Square thickens, a storm of heat and neon, and sound that bends around impossible things. Emma stands frozen, watching her mother disappear like a ship behind fog. Her hand still trembles in the empty space where Susan should have been. Every heartbeat aches, counting for something the world refuses to notice. I am patient. I watch the small, sharp geometry of human failure and hope. Years of longing, years of devotion, funneled into one moment that will never exist for her mother's eyes. And I mark it, a point of grace in the ledger of what must be collected. The city churns, oblivious. Horns, laughter, music, footsteps. The pulse of millions unaware they share the same air with inevitabilities older than grief itself. Emma inhales, shivering, and steps back, her body remembering rhythm and motion that trauma had nearly erased. I let her go, not yet chosen, not yet counted. The balance must hold. One more year, one more iteration, and she will try again. She will search, she will follow, she will reach. And I will be there, waiting for the moment when the geometry aligns, when the final flicker of recognition bends the world's rules just enough to bend her heart into my measure. Tonight she survives. Tonight her longing dissipates like the mist at dawn, but I remember always. 6 remain. The ball continues its slow descent. The crowd surges, a living clockwork of desire and dread. Somewhere beneath the flood of faces, another chosen heart begins its invisible countdown, and I am here, unseen, patient, waiting. To the couple. They are young, they are beautiful, they are already dead, though they don't know that part yet. Robert and Catherine. He is 24, she is 22. They arrive in Times Square just after 6, claiming a place near the center, where the falling ball will paint their faces in liquid silver when the moment comes. Robert keeps Catherine's gloved hand folded inside his own, as if the world might try to steal her away if he loosens his grip. Catherine leans into the wool of his coat, fitting there perfectly, as though the space was made for her and no one else. They are so happy it hurts to witness. This kind of happiness doesn't glow, it burns. Magnesium bright, brief, the sort that leaves afterimages behind your eyes. Catherine tips her face up toward him. Her breath ghosts between them, pale and delicate. Her eyes are full of the future, 60 New Year's Eves stacked neatly ahead of them if luck behaves itself. Robert kisses her forehead, gentle and certain. Yes, 60 years. Yes, we'll be lucky. Yes. Except look closer. Look at the clothes. Catherine's coat is cut in a style that hasn't mattered since Eisenhower was in office. Robert's fedora is narrow-brimmed and proper, a relic of a time when men still believed hats meant something. Beyond the crowd, the cars are long and chrome-heavy, rolling monuments from Detroit's golden age. The billboards glow warmer than they should, incandescent instead of digital, their light closer to fire than electricity. It is 1962 in their corner of Times Square. It is always 1962 for Robert and Catherine. They don't notice that no one ever touches them. They don't notice the subtle way the crowd parts as they move, how strangers step aside without understanding why, responding to a cold they cannot name. They don't see that they cast no shadows beneath the streetlights. They don't hear how Catherine's laughter falls wrong, how it doesn't quite travel the way sound should. They don't notice that their breath fades too quickly. What happened was this. On December 31st, 1962, Times Square was too full, past celebration, past safety. Someone screamed, someone fell. Panic caught like a spark in dry grass. The crowd became a single animal with one ancient thought: escape. Bodies surged, barriers held. 13 people were crushed. Catherine died first. Her ribs folded inward like a collapsing cage. Robert died trying to shield her, an act as noble as it was useless because it never works. It never has. But I have watched them long enough to learn something. Some loves generate their own gravity. Some moments are so perfect they bend time around themselves, forming a pocket, a loop, a mercy too small to save a life but large enough to preserve a feeling, a place where the dead can exist without knowing they are ghosts. Robert and Catherine return every year. They arrive at 6. They talk. They kiss. They plan a future that already failed to happen. At midnight, as the ball drops, they kiss again. And then nothing. The reset is instant. They blink and it's 6 o'clock again. A year later, fresh, thrilled, doomed. They are not afraid. They are not aware. They are not in pain. And for that, I leave them alone. Robert and Catherine are not mine to take. They already belong to time itself. 5 remain. The countdown continues. Want to forget again. Robert closes his eyes. For 63 years, forgetting has been the kindness. Forgetting has been the mercy that lets them laugh, lets them plan apartments and futures and decades that never arrive. Forgetting has been the anesthetic slipped gently into the wound of death. And now it is gone. He opens his eyes and looks at Catherine, really looks at her. Not the idea of her, not the looped version polished by repetition. Her. She is cold, not metaphorically. Cold the way stone is cold, the way deep water is cold. Her breath fogs, but it does not come from effort. It comes from habit, a remembered reflex. I don't want to go back to 6, she whispers. I don't want to blink and lose you again. The ball is still hours away. Time has never mattered less. Around them the crowd swells and shifts. Elbows bump, drinks spill. Someone laughs too loudly. Someone else vomits into a trash can. Life, messy and loud and gloriously temporary, presses in on them from all sides. Robert takes her face in his hands. His palms do not warm her skin. We could leave, he says, the idea forming even as he speaks it. We've never tried leaving. Catherine's eyes widen, not with hope exactly, but with something adjacent, possibility's pale cousin. They turn together, pushing into the crowd. For the first time in 6 decades, they move with intention instead of ritual. Something resists them. Not a wall, not hands, something thicker. The air itself seems reluctant, syrup slow. People slide past them without contact, bodies diverting unconsciously like water splitting around a submerged wreck. Catherine stumbles. Robert catches her, and his arms pass too easily, like holding smoke that remembers the shape of a body. Panic sharpens her voice. It doesn't want us to go. Of course it doesn't. This pocket of time was never meant to open. It was a compromise, a scar, a concession made by a universe that occasionally feels guilty about how cruel it is. They reach the edge of the crowd near 7th Avenue. Beyond the barricades, traffic crawls. Headlights glow like living eyes. Cars move forward. Cars leave. Cars go somewhere else. Catherine laughs once, short and hysterical. We never even tried, she says. All these years, we never tried. The ball will drop in 3 hours and 45 minutes. Robert looks at the street, at motion, at continuation. If we cross, he says slowly, there's no 6 o'clock, no reset. She nods, I know. If we cross, this might be it. No more years. She nods again, firmer. I know. They step forward. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the cold deepens. Not winter cold, grave cold. The kind that crawls into structure, into memory, into the idea of warmth itself. The lights above Times Square flicker, just once, just enough. I feel them then. Awareness is not sight, it is pressure, it is accounting. They were never meant to notice me. Catherine gasps. She clutches Robert's arm as something vast and impersonal brushes past her thoughts, like a finger checking a pulse that hasn't beaten since 1962. Something watching, she whispers. Robert straightens. Good, he says, surprising even himself. Let it watch. They move again. The resistance tightens, desperate now. Time strains like overstretched fabric. The loop does not want to tear. It has protected them for so long. It has loved them in its way. Love can still be a cage. The barricade is only waist high. Robert swings one leg over. For the first time in 63 years, pain registers, sharp and brief, as the metal scrapes his shin. He laughs wild and bright. Did you feel that? Catherine is crying. Yes. They are halfway over when the crowd noise dims, like someone turning down a dial. The music distorts. Voices stretch thin. This is the moment where most loops snap back. This is the moment where forgetting rushes in like a tide. Catherine grips Robert's hand with all the strength memory has given her. Don't let go, she says. I won't. They fall not down but forward, over the barricade and into the street. A car slams on its brakes. Headlights flare. For an instant they are illuminated fully, completely, as they have never been before. Not ghosts, not memories, not loops. People. The impact is brief. Merciful. When the crowd surges, and the noise returns, and the night stumbles onward, no one notices the absence where Robert and Catherine should be. They do not reset. They do not arrive again at 6. They do not kiss at midnight. They are not counted. And when the year turns, and the world pretends to begin again, I let them go. 4 remain. The clock continues. Thumping. Once. They both gasp. Not breath reaction, reflex rediscovered. Robert's knees buckle as the sensation slams through him. Not memory, not echo, function. His heart is beating. Not the polite imitation he convinced himself he felt every year, but a real muscular insistence, wet and loud and undeniable. Catherine laughs and sobs at the same time, clutching her chest like it might escape her if she loosens her grip. I can feel it, she says. Oh God, I can feel it. They are still fatting at the edges, still translucent, but now something is filling them from the inside out. Color returning where absence lived, weight pooling in their limbs, gravity remembering their names. The crowd does not notice. The living never notice resurrection, unless it inconveniences them. Confetti sticks to Catherine's hair. It sticks, paper meeting oil and sweat. Robert feels cold concrete under his shoes and pain in his shin where the barricade scraped him earlier, now blooming into a dull ache. Pain. He laughs again, hysterical and reverent. It hurts, he says, awed. I'm hurting. Catherine presses her forehead to his. Their skin is warm now, human warm. We didn't loop, she whispers, disbelief trembling through every syllable. We didn't forget. The pocket shudders. Time resists. It always does when something escapes it. Around them, the air tightens. The old gravity, the one that kept them dancing in place for Suxta thra years, pulls once more, hard and desperate, like a hand closing around an ankle. I feel it tear. Not cleanly, nothing ancient ever breaks clean. The loop collapses inward, folding like a burned photograph. The sucks, zara arrivals, the practiced laughter, the rehearsed future, Suxta thra perfect lies snapping at once. Robert and Kitherton stumble as the pressure releases, dropping fully into the flow of time. Someone bumps Robert's shoulder, hard, real. "Watch it," the man says, annoyed, already moving on. Robert stares after him, stunned. "He touched me," he says stupidly. Kitherton is crying again, but these tears are different. They streak hot down her face and drip off her chin. She wipes them away and stares at the wetness on her glove like it's a miracle relic. "We're here," she says, "we're here." They don't know how long they have. That knowledge doesn't come with the gift. Resurrection is not generosity. It is a transaction with unknown terms. They don't know if they have minutes or years, if their hearts will tire quickly, offended at being restarted, if the universe will demand repayment with interest. It doesn't matter. They walk, not away from Times Square, through it, into noise and life and consequence. Robert feels fatigue creeping into his calves. Kitherton feels hunger twist sharp and sudden in her stomach. They laugh at that too. I step back. They were never mine to count. They slip through a crack that only opens when the dead refuse comfort and choose truth instead. It is rare. It is expensive. And it is not repeatable. The clock continues. 3 remain. The ball rises again next year as it always does. The crowd gathers. Hope pretends it is new. And somewhere beneath the lights and music and forgetting, time remembers the night 2 ghosts chose to wake up and were answered. 6 weeks, the doctors say, with the careful softness reserved for children and terminal words. 6 weeks if the fever doesn't spike again. 6 weeks if the platelets hold. 6 weeks if the body agrees to cooperate a little longer. Delilah Mercer does not know the number. She knows only that tonight matters. She is bundled in a pink coat 2 sizes too big, knit hat slipping down over one eye, standing on her father's shoulders so she can see the lights. Her mother keeps one hand wrapped around Delilah's ankle like a tether, as if the crowd itself might steal her away. The cold makes Delilah wheeze, but she refuses to complain. Complaining wastes time. She has already wasted too much of it in hospital rooms that smell like antiseptic and plastic toys, in days measured by blood counts and whispered conversations behind curtains, in nights where the pain is loud enough to keep her awake and the fear is louder. Tonight she is not sick. Tonight she is 9 years old in Times Square on New Year's Eve, and the world looks like it is made of light. She has made wishes before, careful ones, modest ones. She learned early that wishing for too much makes adults' faces do strange things, so she learned to aim small. She wished her hair would grow back faster. She wished the port wouldn't hurt today. She wished her parents would stop crying when they thought she was asleep. Tonight she makes a different wish. She leans down and presses her mouth close to her father's ear and tells him, very seriously, that when the ball drops, she is going to wish that everyone gets 1 more year. Just 1. Even if they don't deserve it. Even if they don't know what to do with it. Her father laughs, but the sound breaks in the middle. He kisses her calf where it rests against his chest and tells her that sounds like a good wish. Her mother wipes her eyes and looks up at Delilah like she is seeing something holy. I feel it then. The seventh mark does not settle. It hesitates. This has happened before, but rarely. Once every few decades, a soul arrives already leaning toward the edge, already half elsewhere, and instead of fear there is something else. A clarity so sharp it cuts through the machinery of counting. Delilah is not afraid of ending. She is afraid of not finishing. She wants to see snow again. She wants to go back to school, even though school was boring before. She wants to grow tall enough to ride the roller coaster she's been measuring herself against for 3 summers. She wants things the way only children want them, without irony, without bargaining, without the poison of expectation. 6 hearts are set, their paths are locked, their bodies already in motion toward their final arithmetic. The 7th looks at me. Not directly. Humans never do. But something in her opens, the way certain doors do when you knock with the right hand. The countdown begins. 10. Delilah counts 2, fingers tapping against her father's forehead, whispering the numbers like a spell. 9. Her heart is weak, failing. It should not make it through another winter. 8. I am the counter. I do not intervene. I have not intervened in 3 centuries. Not for wars, not for plagues, not for lovers praying in foxholes or mothers bargaining with empty skis. 7. But rules, like cages, are only strong until they are tested. 6. Delilah closes her eyes. 5. She does not wish for herself. 4. She wishes for time. 3. Not immortality, not escape, just enough. 2. I feel the structure strain, old and rigid and unused to mercy. 1. Midnight. The ball reaches bottom. Confetti erupts. The city screams itself hoarse. Millions of people kiss and shout and promise things they will not keep. And Delilah Mercer's heart does not stop. It stutters once, twice, then steadies. Not healed, not cured, just continuing. Her father feels it first, the sudden change in her weight, the way her body settles instead of sagging. Her mother sees the color return to her cheeks, faint but unmistakable. Delilah opens her eyes and laughs. I think it worked, she says, as if surprised but pleased. 6 souls leave me as scheduled. Quietly, efficiently, the harvest proceeds. But the 7th remains. I release the mark. It is not salvation. It is not forever. It is not even a promise. It is time. Enough for one more snowfall. Enough for one more birthday candle. Enough for the roller coaster. Enough for a few memories that will matter more than their length. The universe will take her eventually. It always does. Even I do not argue with that. But tonight she stays. The clock resets, the crowd thins, the city exhales. And I, who have counted without exception for 317 years, make a note in no ledger anyone will ever read. Sometimes, once in a very long while, the count is wrong on purpose. And the world is better for it. She stops 3 feet away, close enough that I can feel the heat leaking off her, thin and frantic, like steam from cracked ice. You, she says, not loud, she doesn't need to be. Her voice lands inside me anyway. You're here for her. I have heard every prayer ever whispered in this place. Bargains, promises, lies people tell the dark. None of them have ever been spoken to me. Not like this. I don't make mistakes, I say, and the words sound older than language, like frost forming. I don't negotiate. Rachel laughs once, a short, broken sound. You think this is negotiation? Her eyes flick back to Delilah, who is staring at us now, puzzled, tugging at her sleeve. She's 9. She still believes the ball drops because people are watching. I tell myself to step away. to dissolve back into the spaces between breaths, to be what I have always been. Instead, I stay. You've already taken enough, Rachel says. Her hands are shaking now, but she doesn't look away. You've had centuries, take me instead. This is the moment when humans usually crumble, when hope finally understands it is lost. But Rachel Mercer stands like a wall built out of love and bone, and I feel something fracture where nothing has ever been. I can't, I say. She nods as if she expected that. Then give her time. The word hits harder than any prayer. Time. The thing I measure, harvest, collect. The thing I am sworn to keep moving forward, never back. The crowd begins the countdown practice chant somewhere behind us. 10, 9, a rehearsal for an ending. 6 weeks, she whispers. That's all they'll give her. Give her spring. Let her see the trees come back. Let her forget hospitals. Delilah steps closer, slipping between us. She looks up at me, head tilted. Mom, she says, who's this? I look down at her. For the first time in 317 years, I look directly at one of mine before the moment arrives. She doesn't see a monster. She doesn't see an ending. She smiles, small and tired and unbearably bright. You feel cold, she says. Then after a second, are you lonely? Something in me breaks completely. Midnight is coming. I can feel it pulling, a tide I have never resisted. 7 hearts, maybe 4, maybe fewer. The mechanism is already in motion. But mechanisms are made, and what is made can only once be altered. I kneel. The crowd roars as the ball begins to descend for real this time. I can't stop the clock, I tell Rachel, but I can miscount. Her breath leaves her in a sob she doesn't let make noise. Delilah laughs as fireworks crack overhead. Somewhere, a heart that was meant to stop keeps beating. Then another, then another. When the final note of Auld Lang Syne fades, the harvest is lighter than it should be. Spring will come for Delilah Mercer, and I will carry the weight of that choice for as long as there are years left to turn. She walks the square every year when the ball begins to fall. She feels what I feel. She knows what I know. The ache before the moment, the certainty when a name settles into place. 7 souls, chosen not by chance, not by cruelty, but by balance, by mercy where mercy can exist. She understands immediately. I see it in her face. Horror first, then defiance, then the slow, crushing weight of comprehension. You're asking me to become you, Rachel says. I am not asking, I answer, and the truth of it tastes like iron. I am ending. The crowd's chant swells. 40 seconds. 39. Delilah is sobbing now, clinging to her mother's coat, buried against her side like a sparrow hiding from winter. Rachel drops to her knees and pulls her daughter close, rocking her as if motion alone could hold the world together. Her voice is steady when she speaks again, steadier than it has any right to be. If I do this, she says, she lives. She lives, I say. She grows. She forgets hospitals. She learns the names of trees. She will not remember me. Rachel closes her eyes. For one terrible second, I think she will refuse. I think the universe will snap back into its old shape and crush us all beneath it. Then she nods. Okay, she says, okay. The word seals it. The cold peels away from me, layer by ancient layer. The weight I have carried since the first winter loosens, then slips free entirely. Time surges forward, unburdened. Midnight strikes. Fireworks split the sky. The crowd screams itself hoarse with joy, unaware of the exchange that has just rewritten their world by a single, invisible degree. 7 hearts falter elsewhere in the city. 7 endings, clean and quiet. Not here. Delilah looks up, confused, tears drying on her cheeks. Mom, she asks, why are you crying? Rachel laughs then, a broken, beautiful sound, and presses her forehead to her daughter's. Because you're still here, she says. Because it's a new year. I am already fatting, becoming what I was never allowed to be before, nothing. As I go, Rachel Mercer straightens. She looks older somehow, stronger, marked. She doesn't look at me again. Spring comes, just as promised. And every year after, when the ball descends and the crowd counts backward toward hope, a woman walks Times Square with 7 names burning softly in her chest. And for the first time since humans learned to fear the dark, death is no longer alone. The transfer is not instant. The transfer is slow, deliberate, like frost crawling across glass. The cold leaves me first, not all at once, but in thin, trembling sheets, as if my body, if I ever truly had one, is remembering warmth for the first time. The weight of centuries loosens. The counting stops. The names fall silent. The endless ledger snaps shut. Rachel Mercer gasps. She staggers, catching herself against the metal barrier, the same barrier that would have ended her daughter's life in another version of the world. Her breath fogs once, twice. Then the fog stops forming as the cold moves fully into her. She shivers, but it is not from the winter. I feel something else instead. Gravity, heat, time no longer frozen at the edge of midnight, but rushing forward, chaotic and alive. I am becoming small, finite, mortal. The rules settle into Rachel, like a sentence being carved into bone. 7, a voice says inside her, not my voice, not anymore. 7 every year, no more, no less. When the clock turns, you will know. You will always know. Her eyes lift, unfocused now, seeing things layered beneath the crowd. Threads of ending, flickers of last moments. Invisible marks blooming above 7 unsuspecting souls like pale constellations only she can read. Rachel squeezes her hands into fists, as if trying to hold herself together. Delilah tugs at her sleeve again. Mom. Rachel blinks, looks down, and for just one heartbeat, the woman and the function exist together, overlapping like 2 images that haven't fully separated yet. I'm here, she says quickly, too quickly. I'm right here. The cancer is already gone. It dissolves quietly, without drama, cells forgetting their rebellion, the body remembering how to heal. No trumpet sounds. No miracle is announced. The universe rarely celebrates its own corrections. Fireworks explode overhead. Midnight arrives late and all at once. The crowd screams. Strangers kiss. Confetti rains like false snow. No one notices the moment death steps back into the world as a man. I sink to my knees, overwhelmed by sensation. The noise hurts. The cold bites. My heart slams against my ribs in a panicked, glorious rhythm. I am shaking. I am alive. Rachel Mercer straightens. Her posture changes, subtle, permanent. The crowd flows around her without touching, without seeing. She is already becoming absence, already becoming the space people step through without knowing why. She does not look at me again. She takes Delilah's hand, warm and real and stubbornly alive, and lets herself be carried into the crowd, into a future she will watch but never fully belong to, into decades she will measure but never share. As they disappear, the last of the cold leaves me completely. I do not follow. I stay where I am, sobbing quietly while the world celebrates, a nameless man among millions free at last. And every New Year's Eve after that, when the ball begins to fall and the air tightens with expectation, I feel it, far away, like a scar aching in winter. The counting has not stopped. It has only changed hands. Teeth. The knowledge settles in me with the weight of inevitability. I am not the author of this story. I am the margin note written by something that does not care if the ink bleeds. Silas Cormier is gone now, not dead in the way I once harvested death, but erased, overwritten. His last thought isn't anger, it's confusion, a half-formed image of headlights on wet asphalt, a song on the radio he didn't recognize, then nothing. The space where he was collapses inward, tidy and complete, like a room that was never furnished to begin with. I stagger. Hands grab me, real hands, warm, impatient. Someone shouts something I don't understand. English used to be optional. Meaning came without sound. Now words arrive wrapped in noise, late and imprecise. "Buddy, you okay?" I nod because that's what the body does when it wants the world to leave it alone. The muscles remember things I don't. Reflexes older than thought take over. Silas's mouth forms a smile he's practiced 1,000 times in mirrors. It feels obscene, wearing it. The crowd surges. The countdown resumes somewhere behind me, restarted by people who need ritual the way lungs need air. 10, 9, 8. I'm supposed to be gone by now. The counter is supposed to be singular, eternal. But here I am, temporary, breakable, leaking heat into the night. 7 souls will still die tonight. I know this with the certainty of gravity. Rachel will mark them. Rachel will feel the same quiet horror I felt every year when the knowing arrived uninvited and exact. She will hate me for a while. Then she will stop hatting and start enduring. That's worse. 6-5. I press Silas's hands, my hands against my chest, as if I can steady the heart by force. It doesn't listen. It keeps beating with arrogant independence. 4-3. For the first time in 3 centuries, I do not know what happens next. 2. Midnight detonates. Confetti explodes overhead. Strangers kiss. Someone vomits near my shoes. Somewhere a heart stops. Somewhere else another will follow. Rachel will feel each one like a bell struck inside her ribs. I don't feel them anymore. The silence where the counting used to be is deafening. I laugh. The sound bursts out of me, raw and wrong and loud enough that the man beside me flinches. I clap a hand over my mouth, shocked by my own noise. Laughter used to be an abstraction. Now it hurts. I am free. And I am guilty. Those 2 truths will live together inside me for the rest of this borrowed life, circling each other like wary animals. When the crowd thins, when the streets empty, and the year begins pretending it has never happened before, I will go home to Silas's apartment. I will sleep in Silas's bed. I will call his wife and hear her voice break when she realizes something is wrong but can't say why. I will carry this body forward until it fails, because it will fail. All bodies do. And when I die, truly die, not transfer, not exchange, I don't know who will be waiting. Rachel will still be out there counting. And for the first time since winter learned how to end things, I will not be alone in the dark, but I will no longer be necessary. That may be the cruelest mercy of all. Her what I can, the only truth I have. My voice is a shadow of sound, rough and foreign, but she hears it. Your mom, she's still with you, in ways you can't see. She's part of the air you breathe, part of the warmth around you, part of the courage you feel inside. She chose life for you, and that's her love. That's everything she can give you right now. Delilah blinks, hesitant, the hiccups still trembling through her chest. She tilts her head, processing, absorbing something bigger than her 9 years can fully hold. I don't understand, she whispers. You will, I say, and for the first time in centuries, I feel the weight of hope instead of inevitability. She gave you this moment. You're alive. That's what matters. That's what she wanted. Somewhere behind us, the crowd erupts as the ball hits midnight. The noise slams into me like a wave, but I barely notice it. For the first time, I am not counting. I am not harvesting. I am just here. Delilah leans against me, exhausted, her small body still trembling. I hold her tight. Warm, human warmth. It feels impossible, sacred. The lights of Times Square blaze around us. Confetti rains down. Strangers scream and kiss. And life continues its relentless, chaotic celebration. I realize something I've never understood in 317 years. Some endings are not mine to mark. Some beginnings are not mine to deny. And in that truth, I find something like peace. I let her go when she's ready, and she runs back into the crowd, eyes wide, searching for her mother in the chaos of humanity and hope. I stand alone for a moment, feeling the cold bite of December, feeling the heartbeat in this stolen body, feeling life in a way I've never felt it before. I am not a counter right now. I am not a function. I am something else entirely. And for the first time, I understand that even the function, the endless harvest, the protocol, the inevitability, can bend just for a heartbeat, just for love. The world spins, midnight passes, life goes on, and I go with it. And I stand there in the aftermath of that hope, holding Delilah's hand, as if it is an anchor keeping me from drifting back into the cold. Confetti sticks to my hair. Someone slaps me on the shoulder, shouting Happy New Year, like it's a spell that can fix anything. A woman laughs too loudly nearby. A man cries without hiding it. Life, in all its careless cruelty and stubborn beauty, keeps going. Delilah looks up at the lights, at the falling paper, at the strangers kissing and cheering. Her face is hollowed out by something she doesn't have words for yet, but she is alive, warm, breathing. Her heart beats on, ignorant of how close it came to stopping. We move away from the center, step by step, until the crowd thins and the noise dulls to a distant roar. I feel every sensation, cold biting my ears, the ache in my legs, the strange comfort of exhaustion. This body complains the way bodies do. It reminds me constantly that it will fail one day. And for the first time, that doesn't feel like a curse. It feels honest. Behind us, unseen, Rachel Mercer walks her new path. She counts, she marks. She learns what I learned slowly and unwillingly, that the world demands payment and it always collects. Tonight she takes her first soul. Tomorrow she will take another. Years from now, she will stop screaming inside when it happens. Centuries from now, she may not remember what her daughter's voice sounded like. That is the price. Delilah squeezes my hand again. Are we safe now? She asks. I don't know what safe really means. I've watched too many people die thinking they were safe. But I nod anyway because she needs someone to nod. Yes, I say, for tonight. We reach the edge of Times Square. The lights are still bright, but the crush is gone. Somewhere, sirens wail. Somewhere, champagne bottles pop. Somewhere, 7 lives are ending so millions can believe in beginnings. And I walk into the new year with a child who isn't mine, in a body that isn't mine, carrying a promise I never chose but intend to keep. I don't know what I am now. I only know what I am not. I am not the counter anymore. I am alive. And for now, that will have to be enough. The air hit me first, a sharp, biting December wind that reminded me I had a body again. My lungs drew in warmth I hadn't felt in centuries. My fingers closed around hers, small and trembling, alive, insisting that I remember what it meant to be human. For the first time in over 300 years, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't invisible. The crowd thinned in fits and starts, spilling into glowing streets and heated doorways, leaving behind the ghosts of celebration and the scent of crushed soda cans and discarded wrappers. Delilah didn't speak. She didn't need to. She only held my hand, letting it guide her through the chaos, her little frame radiating fatigue and wonder in equal measure. I had no map for what came next, no instructions, not even a name to claim as my own. Names dissolve after centuries, like frost under a rising sun. But one truth anchored me. Someone had traded everything to give her this night, to give her life. Rachel Mercer, the woman who had been more than a mother, more than a presence, had vanished so that Delilah could breathe, could grow, could survive. And that meant this child was no longer just someone to protect. She was a trust I could never betray, a debt I could never repay. We moved to the edge of the square, every step a negotiation with the noise, the shoving bodies, the thrum of human celebration. My mind raced, not with fear, but with necessity. I would invent her world from scratch if I had to. Police, social workers, strangers, it didn't matter. I would become whatever story they needed, an uncle, a friend, a guardian. I would raise her the way her mother would have wanted, weaving warmth and care into the life she had been given, a gift bought with a sacrifice I couldn't fully comprehend yet. Delilah glanced up at me, eyes wide, still shimmering with tears unshed. I squeezed her hand gently. Tonight wasn't for explanations, for histories, for truths too heavy for a 9-year-old. Tonight, she only needed warmth. I only needed to remember how to inhabit this body, to remember the strange, alien joy of being human. I flagged down a cab. The driver's gaze lingered on me, curious and mundane, reminding me again that I had flesh, presence, and weight. "Where to?" he asked. "The Roosevelt," I said, voice rough, foreign to my own ears. Delilah slid into the backseat, shivering now, her little body insisting on sensation she hadn't been meant to feel. I climbed in beside her. The city sped past. Lights blurred into streams of color, horns and laughter colliding into a pulse I could feel in my chest. The cab driver attempted small talk, words spilling like water over stones. "Did you see the ball drop? First time in Times Square?" I answered yes and no, giving just enough truth to anchor us, just enough lies to navigate the world we'd re-entered. Behind us, unseen, the woman who had given everything walked through the crowd, invisible and eternal, learning the weight of the role she had accepted. Ahead of us, a child who should not yet know the edge of mortality clung to life, with an innocence forged from someone else's sacrifice. And in between, I existed, flesh and blood and responsibility, learning what it truly meant to be alive after centuries of watching the living pass like shadows I could no longer touch. We drove on, leaving the square behind, the chaos, the 7 lives about to end, the remnants of the function that ruled them all. Tonight was survival. Tonight was breath. And for the first time, I understood that life was not a protocol, not a function, not a task. Life was this fragile, trembling, beautiful mess, and it was ours to hold if only we dared. Delilah presses her forehead to the glass, eyes wide as the city blurs past. Steam curls around her breath like smoke, twisting and fatting with each exhale. 3 blocks from the square, the cab halts at a red light. And through the misted pane, I see her, Rachel. Not quite human, not fully ghost, standing at the corner with a presence that makes the air itself shiver. She watches a woman in a crimson coat stumble toward the subway entrance, her focus absolute, a predator's patience wrapped in sorrow. The way Rachel's gaze follows her, I can feel the weight of inevitability in it. This woman is marked, counted, tethered. She is a soul that belongs to the function now. Delilah presses her hand against the glass, spreading her fingers wide, and speaks in a voice I didn't know she had. "Mommy says not to be afraid. She's going to count now." The words vibrate in the air, cold and urgent, like wind scraping over gravestones. I turn to her. Her eyes are distant, glazed with a vision I cannot share, seeing a world layered atop ours, listening to a rhythm older than life. Her breath fogs the window, forming shapes I can't decipher. Numbers, perhaps, or something older, something that hums with inevitability. The light changes. The cab moves forward. Delilah blinks and the faraway look vanishes. She leans back into her seat as if nothing extraordinary has just occurred. But her hand, pressed to the glass, is still cold. Not the ordinary bite of winter, not the snap of December air, but a cold that carries centuries. The cold I remember from the time I was the counter, marking lives with perfect precision. The absence of heat, the absence of mercy, the presence of inevitability. I brush my fingers over her wrist. Her pulse is steady, warm, alive, but the chill lingers, creeping like frost through her skin, fatting only slowly. That chill speaks volumes. The bargain left its mark. Rachel, even now tethered to the child she saved, whispers across the distance. Counting, always 7. And Delilah will always feel it, the pulse of her mother's function beneath her fingers, the invisible rhythm in her mind, the cold creeping unbidden. I cannot tell her this. Not yet. She is 9, too young to carry the knowledge of eternal vigilance, of a mother's sacrifice etched into the marrow of her being. To know now that every New Year's Eve will carry this resonance, this ghostly thread, would be to weigh her soul down before it has learned to soar. So I sit with the knowledge as the cab eases to the Roosevelt. I pay the driver with Silas Cormier's money, still foreign in my fingers. I take Delilah's hand, warm again for now. But I can feel beneath the skin the seed of something that will never fully leave her. The bargain has roots, and its frost will bloom on every anniversary, whispering of sacrifice, absence, and the cost of life made possible through love that cannot touch, but will always be felt. Waiting to wake, Rachel gave her child a future, but not a clean one. The universe never allows clean exchanges. Nothing is ever severed without leaving fibers behind. Love especially. Love always leaves a cord. It stretches, it tightens, it pulls forever. Inside the hotel, warmth hits me like a physical force. Gold light, thick carpets, the smell of perfume and alcohol and victory. Couples laugh too loudly, kiss like they're afraid time might steal their mouths away. I stand among them wearing a life that isn't mine. Hands that remember keys. A wallet that opens without surprise. A name I haven't spoken because I'm afraid it might answer back. At the desk I lie easily. Words arrange themselves without effort. Lost key. Crowds. Wife already upstairs. Child exhausted. The man nods because this night has taught him not to care too deeply. A card slides across the counter. My signature appears like muscle memory. A key is handed over. Room 847. Another door opened. Another story accepted. The elevator hums upward. Delilah leans against the wall, eyes half closed. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't cry, she just says it. I'm tired. 3 words, simple, ordinary, and they crack me open, because I remember tired. I remember centuries without rest, without sleep, without the mercy of stopping. And here is a child who deserves nothing more than to be allowed to close her eyes. The room is bland in the way hotels are proud of. Clean lines, neutral colors, a view that pretends to be impressive. I tell her she can use the bathroom first. She nods and disappears inside. Water runs. A toothbrush scrapes. Then quieter sounds, controlled sounds. The kind children make when they don't want adults to hear them breaking. I stand by the window and look down at the city. Somewhere out there, Rachel is learning what I learned slowly. That souls are heavy, that names stick, that every choice leaves residue. She's discovering that the function does not care why you do what you do, only that you do it. I hope she's angry. I hope rage keeps her sharp. Anger burns, acceptance freezes. Delilah steps out, face red, eyes swollen, pajamas missing because she didn't pack for a night like this. She looks at the 2 beds, then at me, unsure. I point to the one by the window. She climbs in without a word, pulls the blanket up like armor. I sit in the chair, alert, restless, afraid to sleep in a body that still feels borrowed. Minutes stretch. The city hums below. Then her voice reaches me, thin but steady. Will you stay? The question lands softly and shatters me anyway. I nod, though she can't see it. I move the chair closer. She turns on her side, watching me like she's afraid I might fade if she looks away. Mommy said, she starts, then stops. Her fingers curl into the sheet. She said to listen when it gets cold. My throat tightens. I don't trust my voice, so I answer carefully. Then we'll listen together. That seems enough for now. Her breathing slows. Sleep takes her in pieces, then all at once. I watch her chest rise and fall, memorizing the proof of it. Alive, here, warm. Outside, the city keeps celebrating. Inside, a child sleeps. And for the first time since I can remember, I am not counting. I am keeping watch instead. She asks for company in a voice barely louder than a thought. And in that moment, I understand something dangerous. This night is not allowed to end the way nights usually do. I take a seat beside her bed. She reaches out without opening her eyes, her fingers finding mine as if she's afraid the world might vanish if she lets go. We stay like that while sleep slowly claims her, breath by breath, until the tension drains from her small body. Her hand is impossibly warm. I've known cold for longer than memory can count. I've felt warmth drain away from palms larger than this, older than this, stronger than this. I've watched pulses stutter and stop. I've cataloged endings by the thousands, maybe more. Each one final, each one irreversible. But this hand refuses to cool. It beats with quiet insistence, life pushing back, blood moving with purpose. survival arguing its case against eternity. This child is here because her mother refused to accept the rules. On the longest night of the year, a woman looked straight at the inevitable and chose defiance. She didn't sleep. She didn't run. She stayed awake, holding her daughter's hand, daring the universe to take her instead. And it did. Now the weight of that choice sits with me. By morning, there will be questions, officials, paperwork, people trained to separate children from anything that doesn't fit neatly into a file. They'll ask where her mother went. They'll expect a story that makes sense, a story that fits inside their narrow understanding of how the world works. If I tell them the truth, they'll lock it away behind disbelief. They'll take this girl and pass her from house to house, year to year, until she learns not to ask anymore, until her mother becomes a blur she's afraid to remember. That cannot happen. A life was traded for this one. A future was purchased at an unbearable price. Letting it unravel would be the cruelest betrayal imaginable. So I decide. I will lie. Not carelessly, not poorly. I will build a version of reality so solid no one dares question it. I will become whatever shape is required. Guardian, relative, shadow. Anything that keeps this child safe and whole. And one day, far in the future, when she's no longer small and the truth won't crush her, I'll take her back to the place where everything changed. I'll tell her to pay attention to the chill that slips between people without warning, the empty space that makes crowds uneasy. I'll tell her that's where love went when it ran out of time. Maybe, just maybe, if she looks with enough longing, she'll catch a glimpse, long enough for a silent thank you, long enough for an unspoken goodbye. But that day is distant. For now, there is only this quiet room, a sleeping child, a hand that still holds mine, and dawn inching through the window, pale and indifferent, ushering in a year that has no idea what it's already been given. At this very hour, while the city exhales its last traces of celebration, Rachel Mercer is moving through the streets alone, discovering what forever actually weighs. I consider trying to reach her, some impossible signal sent through whatever invisible thread now binds us. I want her to know her daughter is breathing easily, that the promise is being kept, that nothing she surrendered was wasted. But I stay silent, because she already knows. Some fragment of her must still be watching, still counting seconds instead of years, still anchoring herself to one undeniable truth: her child is alive. That warmth exists somewhere in the world, even if she can never touch it again. Delilah shifts beside me. Her fingers tighten around mine, then loosen as if she's testing reality in her sleep. She whispers something soft and unfinished, a half-formed sound. It could be a name. It could be nothing at all. Whatever it is, it fades without fear. In the growing daylight, her face is calm, untouched by the impossible decision that saved her, unaware of the price that was paid on her behalf. I feel the certainty settle in my bones. The sickness is gone. Not healed, removed, erased. The way a shadow disappears when the light source is gone, I sense its absence the way I once sensed approaching endings. The bargain was honored, fully, precisely. She will have a life. A long one, a messy one. She'll love recklessly, fail loudly, learn slowly. She'll age. She'll soften. And one day, far from this morning, she'll close her eyes surrounded by voices that know her name. And Rachel will keep walking. Always walking. I close my eyes, startled by the sensation. I forgot what it was like to have them, to have a body that reacts, a stomach that twists, a chest that tightens with emotion instead of obligation. Before this, I was nothing but a role. For centuries uncounted, I existed as a mechanism, recording, observing, moving forward without pause, necessary, precise, empty. I did my work without question because questions require memory, and mine had long since been worn away. I must have been human once. Everyone begins that way. But whatever name I answered to, whatever face I loved, whatever choice placed me on that path, it's all gone now, sanded smooth by time until nothing recognizable remained. And I wonder if that's what waits for Rachel. Decades from now, or centuries, a slow erosion until even Delilah's face blurs, until love becomes a concept instead of a feeling, until there's nothing left but the task. The thought makes me ill. This body responds to that fear with real discomfort, a tightening, a rejection of the idea that love could simply vanish. But maybe that's how survival works in roles like ours. Maybe forgetting is the only way to endure endless endings. Maybe you can't bear witness to so much loss and remain fully human. I don't want that to be true. I hope she remembers. I hope she clings to those memories with everything she has. I hope every soul she marks reminds her why she said yes. I hope the love that drove her choice doesn't freeze over, even as the years stretch without mercy. Because if love can survive forever, then maybe this sacrifice means something more than survival. And maybe, just maybe, forever doesn't have to be empty. Hope freezes last. Everything else goes solid first. I've learned that the universe has very little patience for hope. It allows it briefly, the way winter allows a single green leaf before the frost takes it. Hope is free. That's why it's so often punished. Morning finishes arriving. Sunlight floods the room, thick and golden, turning cheap walls into something almost holy. The light catches Delilah's hair and makes it glow like the world is trying to apologize. She looks impossibly small in the bed, 9 years old, alone, alive because of a debt so vast it can never be balanced. And my work, my real work begins now. Not counting, not collecting, protecting. My task is to make sure she never feels the weight of what was traded for her breath, to let her grow without the shadow of sacrifice pressing on her shoulders, to allow mistakes, stupidity, joy, anger, love, a future that belongs to her, not to the price that was paid. It feels impossible, harder than centuries of being untouched by grief. But I will do it anyway, because someone looked into the worst deal imaginable and chose love, and love that fierce deserves proof. Delilah wakes at exactly 8. Her eyes open, and for a brief, fragile second, nothing is wrong. Then memory rushes in like a wave, and her face tightens. I brace myself for tears. They don't come. Instead, she breathes in, shaky, controlled, and sits up. Can I have breakfast? That's all. As if the world didn't fracture overnight. As if mothers don't vanish into cold laws and endless duty. As if children aren't somehow built to survive disaster by focusing on the next small, human need. We go downstairs. She gets pancakes, I get coffee. Coffee. The first sip hits me like a memory I didn't know I missed. Bitter, warm, familiar and strange at the same time. I hold the cup too long just to feel the heat. Delilah eats slowly but thoroughly. She finishes her juice, asks for more syrup. Then, without drama, without fear, she asks the question that's been sitting between us since midnight. What happens to me now? I tell her the truth, trimmed, reshaped, made safe. That I'll take care of her. That her mother wanted her protected, happy, alive. That we'll figure things out together. That right now in this booth with sticky fingers and orange juice, she is safe. She thinks about it. Then she looks at me and asks, "Who are you?" Fair question. The answer comes out before I can stop it. My name is Silas. The name settles into place like it's been waiting. Old, worn, earned. A name for someone who once was something else and is now trying to be human without instructions. She accepts it without hesitation. Then she asks the question that stills everything. Is my mom dead? I stop mid-sip. Time stretches, not the kind that counts seconds, but the kind that waits to see what kind of person you'll be next. I set the cup down. No, I say carefully. She's not gone. She just had to go somewhere very far away to keep you here. Delilah absorbs this, doesn't argue, doesn't cry. Can she see me? Yes. Can I see her? Not yet. She nods like that answer fits something inside her. Then she goes back to her pancakes. Outside, the city keeps moving. People stumble home. Promises evaporate. Towers stand quiet, waiting for the next turning. And somewhere in the cold, a woman walks forward, carrying eternity on her shoulders. Here at this table, I make a vow. The debt ends with me. The question lands clean and sharp, the way only children can ask things. There's no room to dodge it, no softness built in, and for a moment, every answer feels wrong. If I lie outright, I erase her mother. If I tell the truth, I shatter her. So I choose the narrow path between. I tell her her mother is gone, but not erased. That she's still near in a way that can't be seen. That she's watching, even if she can't come back. It's the kind of answer adults give when they don't have language for the truth. Gentle, blurry, meant to soothe. Delilah doesn't look soothed. She became a ghost, she says. Not a question, a conclusion. I nod. That seems to be enough. She lowers her gaze back to the plate and keeps eating. And in that moment, I understand something most adults forget. Children don't need everything explained. They need the world to stay standing. Last night, her mother became something impossible. This morning, there are pancakes. Both facts exist. The pancakes still matter. When breakfast is done, we go back upstairs. And then I do the thing I've been delaying. I call the city. I introduce myself as family, a brother, a man who arrived too late. I describe a sudden medical event, say the right words in the right order, drop the name of a hospital I memorized minutes earlier. The voice on the other end sounds tired enough to believe me. She talks about paperwork and timelines and trauma-informed care. She says someone will come by later today. When the call ends, I sit down hard on the bed. Documents, proof, history. I open the wallet again, really look this time. A name, an age, a face that now belongs to me. A life with receipts and photos and children who smile beside a man I'm wearing like a coat. So I am not new, I am borrowed. What happened to the man who owned this body before last night? I do know. That question settles somewhere deep and heavy, another cost on a growing ledger. I push it aside. Some debts don't get paid immediately. For now, I learn his name, his address, his past. I practice being him until the lie feels like memory. At 3, the social worker arrives. She has a clipboard and kind eyes dulled by repetition. She asks questions that circle grief without touching it directly. She speaks to Delilah alone. Delilah tells her what she believes, that her mother changed, that she's gone but still around. The woman writes something clinical and nods. She says therapy will help. I agree. She says the checks will take time. I say I'll wait. When she leaves, the room feels quieter than before. The afternoon light drains away. Delilah curls up and sleeps in her clothes, worn down by the effort of surviving paperwork. I cover her. Then I stand at the window and watch the city darken. Lights flicker on, streets fill. Somewhere beyond sight, a woman walks alone, learning the shape of eternity, preparing for work that never ends. I don't call out, I don't reach, she knows. And here in this room, I wait, holding onto a promise made in silence. Hopping time will do what nothing else can. Soften the edges without erasing what mattered. By the time night fully settles, I realize she's learning the city the way predators learn terrain. Quiet routes, blind corners, places grief pools thickest. I wonder if regret has found her yet. If now that the screaming lights in the crowd are gone, she weighs the trade differently. A few more weeks of bedtime stories and shared meals. A few more mornings of warmth. Would that have been enough? Would that have been better than endless cold and endless work? That question belongs to forces older than me. Whatever balances these exchanges doesn't explain itself. It never has. My responsibility is smaller and somehow heavier. Protect the child. Shield her from the idea that she owes her life to suffering. Teach her that love is not a ledger. Because love was never a fair transaction. Love was a woman stepping into darkness so her daughter wouldn't have to. Love was choosing to freeze so someone else could keep breathing. Love was saying yes when every sane instinct screamed no. I stay by the window watching the streets pulse and settle. The city exhales. Taxis slide past like glowing insects. Somewhere far away, footsteps move without sound, counting what must be counted. Somewhere closer, a child sleeps, chest rising and falling, unaware of how narrowly the world bent around her. Tomorrow we'll start assembling a story that officials can file and forget. We'll build a past sturdy enough to stand up to questions. We'll keep moving, because when sacrifice rewrites your life, standing still is the only real danger. But tonight I keep watch. I make sure the room stays warm. I make sure nothing reaches for her in the dark. I make sure the promise holds. Outside, death walks unseen, keeping its number straight. The count never changes. 7 will always be 7. But not this one. This child is not on the list. She exists because someone loved her more than they loved their own humanity. And I exist because of that same love, standing here with blood in my veins again, remembering what warmth feels like. I know it won't last. I know cold always wins in the end. I learned that lesson across centuries. But for now, a girl sleeps safely. A city glows. And a woman takes her first steps into forever carrying one memory that refuses to die. The story ends here, at a beginning. A life preserved. A soul transformed. And a man standing between them, keeping a promise he never chose but will never abandon. Because this is what survives after sacrifice. We stand watch. We protect what was saved. We try to be worthy. And when midnight comes again, somewhere out there the counting will begin. But not here. Not tonight. Not her.